Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Appreciate you joining us on our weekly webinar. My name is Harry Brailsford. I'll be joined today by Carl Palachuk. We'll introduce ourselves in a moment. We have a huge audience and a new audience, a lot of new names and faces. So that's pretty exciting for all of us. You are attending the third quarter MSP report. So we put on our analyst hats to have a conversation with you. Let's jump into it. So I'll go first. My name is, again, Harry Brailsford. I am the founder of SMB Nation, which is, for the purposes of today, think of it as a parent company. We have a number of brands beneath us that have different conversations. So, for example, we have a pretty robust conversation over in Office 365 Nation. And we have different types of outreach. So today's the webinar. We have a Sunday paper. We are about a month and a half out from the Tour to Cloud, the fall edition of the Tour to Cloud. And you're welcome to join us in 9 U.S. cities. And SMB Nation is a 17-year-old company of IT pros, MSPs, CSPs, partners, and so on in the small and medium business technology space. Joining me is Carl Palachuk, a longtime friend of the family with SMB Nation. So, Carl, sir, where are you? It sounds like this is pretty exciting stuff. And please introduce yourself.
Thank you, sir. So I am in Albuquerque, New Mexico at the Tech Junction event, which is an event for end users. And I'm here as a guest of Josh Liberman, who you are familiar with from Net Sciences. And so, you know, we're just hanging out and enjoying time here. Veeam is presenting in the next room, so there's a lot of good stuff going on here. In terms of me, I am the author of several books, including the Network Migration Workbook and the Managed Services Operations Manual and several others. I owned a managed service business for about 17 years. Sold that and did coaching with the guy who bought it for a couple of years. And then when he sold the business again, I started a new company. So now I have a tiny little managed service business in Sacramento, California. But I still write books and try to do things like this as often as I can. So I'm grateful to be here.
Well, we sure appreciate it. Always a crowd pleaser and a frequent speaker at conferences and so on. And you actually raise a valid point with a reference to Veeam. A little bit later on, we're going to have a Veeam moment. Veeam has generously underwritten today's webinar and made it possible. And it's the support of companies like Veeam that allow us to have community webinars with really, hopefully compelling and contemporary content. So let's jump right into it. We're going to go through just under an hour of slides and give you our view of the world. Carl and I, we fancy ourselves, again, as analysts in the industry. We're feet on the street. We're out there doing it every day and in different ways. So one of the MSP trends that I'll make mention of and then hand the talking stick over to Carl would be big data. And so here we sit at mid-year, and we're looking back over the last quarter, and we're looking forward into the new quarter. And it's starting to become a roar as people kind of understand the power of data. Carl, I heard a really good, some really good context surrounding big data and analytics and so on, is that all too often, and moving forward even more so, our partners are working with departments other than the IT department. So they're working with the marketing department. They're working with accounting and finance. And, you know, at that level, it's all about the data. And before I hand off to Carl, I will tell you kind of my definition of big data is that we're already doing it. You always were doing big data, okay? So it's nothing new. It was called spreadsheets. And the difference now is that we're attentive to what the data tells us, what the data means, and what relationships we can draw out of it. Carl, what is your definition? Let's talk data silos and haters.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess the way I look at big data is that there's two primary components. The first one is obviously that it's big, meaning that it is gargantuan by our old standards. You know, some of the data sets that people are talking about today are so big they can't be managed in any meaningful way. And so the other part of the definition is it's big and it can't be managed with the old tools. So we have to have new tools and new ways of looking at it. And you know, one of my favorite apps on my phone is this thing called Flight Radar 24, where it takes all the Google images from Google Maps, and then it takes all of the live data for all of the airplanes and all the aircraft in the world at this moment, and you can see all of them, and then you can pick one, and in real time it shows you what the pilot would be seeing given their longitude, latitude, and their direction and altitude, right? I mean, it's unbelievable that we have the ability to do that, and it's in real time, right? So those are the kinds of things that, you know, people are doing. But like you said, all of our clients have data silos. All of our clients have sales data, some of it going back many, many years. And that's a perfect example of where big data is different from just the old school data. Because if you think about your sales data going back, you know, pick any company, any client. Think about your sales data going back 25 years or 30 years. Some is in SQL, some is in old Excel spreadsheets, some is in Microsoft Access, some is in a line of business app. It's not regularized, right? So part of what we have to do with big data is to help our clients get their arms around data that they already have, because it's in so many different formats. Even the date formats are going to be different through all of those different silos. And, you know, who are they going to turn to, right? They're going to turn to the people who actually been helping them with data since day one, and that's us. So for the people who choose to get into this business, I think it's a massive opportunity, and it's truly a blue ocean.
Yeah, and what I would add, and then we'll move on, is that, Carl, we have a lot of new people on the webinar today, and for those of you that play in more of the M space, I really rank this as quite a handsome up for you, coming straight out of the data center, if you will. But if you have a SQL background, this is your time to shine. So if you have that database background, this is really your time moving forward. And a shout out to some of the visualization tools. I'm going to talk about Tableau and their earnings in a couple slides, but the Microsoft Power BI and Elastic and Kibana and some other visualization tools, because at the end of the day, that's kind of why we're here, is to have the data tell us something. Also, a shout out to our research partner, TechIsle. I'll have a couple of shout outs to them in this webinar, but make sure you introduce yourself to TechIsle and Ottawa over there, because he's really writing some good stuff, Carl. He puts out a Sunday blog, and he's on board with the big data initiatives and the opportunity that it provides for our partners. So
very nice.
Yeah.
So Josh Lieberman wants to say hi for 1 second here.
Okay. All right. Let's keep it.
Hey there, guys. How's it going, Harry?
Hey, Josh. Pretty good. Josh, we have a big crowd of a lot of new friends today. So I appreciate you making sure Carl is available down there in Albuquerque to join us, my friend.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we're here at the Tech Junction, New Mexico, which is our annual IT show. It's kind of a third-tier market show that travels the country. It's I think actually they were even in Sacramento, but they usually cater to smaller markets like this. So we're here presenting and hosting Carl in our own small way.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right,
well,
John. Okay.
Yeah,
thank you,
I'll hand it back to Carl. Thanks a lot.
Have a great day. Okay, so Carl, we're gonna talk consolidation. I'm really seeing this as a trend in the industry. You've gone through it yourself, so maybe you can kind of comment on a personal note what some of the dynamics are going through a merger or an acquisition. But we're seeing a transitory period. I talked about this last quarter, by the way, and it's only getting stronger. So on the buy side, you have some firms that have hit critical mass. They have healthy balance sheets. They have great banking relationships, and they can go out and buy MSP practices. And what we're seeing on the buy side is typically an earn-out. So we're not seeing all cash deals. I don't think anyone's got that healthy of a balance sheet right now.
Right.
But we're
Plus,
seeing,
that's a dicey thing to do,
Yeah, exactly. It keeps everybody motivated. On the sell side, what we're seeing is people who are in life transitions. And Carl, I know you have a book out on Relax, Focus, Succeed, and you speak sort of frequently in sort of a different realm about your personal life. And I'm seeing some people who have spent their time in the industry that they want to spend. They're ready to sell for personal reasons and go do something else, or not have the stress of running a company, actually get weekends off. So I've seen it time and time again, but that's kind of the profile on the sell side. Carl, your comments, please, and feel free to maybe talk about what you've gone through in this area.
Well, it's interesting. So what I went through personally is, I kind of wanted to downsize that particular piece of my life, and it was a good time, and I had a good, opportunity and so forth. And so it just made sense for me. And I think what we're seeing kind of nationwide and maybe a little bit on the international scene is the aging of our industry, which we're going to talk about a little bit more later. But
yeah, that's right. We're going to get to that.
The aging of our industry is something that we used to talk about offline, and now it's becoming like front page news. But what's happening is that some people are looking and saying, man, I just didn't make all the money I thought I was going to make, and I may now have to become an employee. And so that's motivating some people. Other people are seeing, wow, there's people out there snapping up MSPs. I'm making a good profit. I'm probably never going to have a better opportunity than now to get out. So mergers and acquisitions has just skyrocketed. And, A.B. Babinchak started a company specifically to help buyers and sellers find each other. So, in the small end of the space. So it's big. And I think Joe Panettiere had an article today about buyers and sellers. So, it's huge.
Yeah. So this, folks, if you joined us late, you've joined us for the third quarter MSP report. It's essentially our mid-year report, and these are trends that we're seeing and we believe are very strong right now. So absolutely, the consolidation story is very robust. And then the move to the CSP business model. So Jameson West is kind of my poster boy. He's been well publicized, so folks, go ahead and search on Jameson West, and you'll see his story. But long story short, what he did is his core business, Aterian, got acquired by a larger organization, and that freed Jameson to follow his passion to kind of start over in the confines of the same office space and the same, infrastructure, but start over with a new brand, start over with Carl with a new balance sheet, and really, pursue the CSP, Cloud Services Provider model, versus the MSP. And in talking with Jameson, in fact, we traded notes this morning, and in talking with Jameson, for me, it was kind of about the balance sheet. Other people might call it making sure you had the right people in the right seat on the bus. But, the skill set that made Jameson successful as a thriving Seattle MSP, and by the way, he acquired a couple of MSPs along the way, that skill set be it Big Iron or server side or what help desk or what have you, wasn't necessarily the same skill set to drive CSP success. So he kind of did a redo, a start over. And I'm impressed. And here again, Tech Isle has a conversation on this. Carl, you want to comment on that? Because I think that's where some people have really struggled, is to go from MSP to CSP.
Yeah, and part of it is that, you know, the people who always want to be the hero and they want to go in and put out the fires, that's not what you do with cloud services. And I mean, you really have to be willing to have a transactional business where, you know, you set people up and, you know, stuff doesn't break. And you know, that's a completely different environment than the people who got into this because they like fiddling with computers. You also need a different set of employees. When we sell cloud services, I have 90% of the setup done by an administrative assistant because it's not a technical thing. You know, you go online and you create an account at Intermedia or Microsoft or whoever, Rackspace, and it's truly an administrative task, not a technical task. And, you know, there's some piece of it where you need to know certain technical things, but for the most part, you can buy and sell and cash checks without having, you know, an MCSE on staff. And so it really is a different business. And what made you successful over there may not make you successful over here. So I think you're right about that. And Jameson is exactly the kind of person that he's willing to say, all right, where do I need to retool? Because, you know, the next big thing is not going back and selling servers. Right? Those days are gone.
Yeah, exactly. And part and parcel, by the way, to this conversation and how Veeam weaves into the fabric is, you know, Carl, there are avenues to get your bit fix up in the data center and with Azure and some of the virtualization environments and hosting environments. So the bit fix still exists. Stand by for the fourth quarter report. And I'm not being facetious, Carl, because our fall tour, the overwhelming survey results were to have more Azure content. So that's going to be, for me, a fourth quarter conversation, and keep it right here, folks. So let's move into our salary survey results. I just want to give a quick peek. See if I can do this. Carl, can you see the
please tell us your
survey
education level.
Yep. Yeah, folks, I'm going to go pretty quick. I appreciate the people that participated in this. We had a robust crowd. So college degree, number one, or higher. So if you look at the skew, well educated, which we expect, tell us your age. Carl, make a mental snapshot of this when we get to your slide, my friend, on demographics, but make a snapshot of this. But if you take the response D and E, so 43 to 58, clearly the majority, almost a majority in the 50s age group, almost, not quite. Right. But boy, you combine the two, boy howdy.
It looks like it's over 70%.
Yeah, and then I here again, I want you to think about, and we'll save the conversation for a couple slides, but look at column B. Look at column B, what's going on down there. So, folks, I'm just going to page down. Current job title is owner or a proprietor of the business by a long shot. Thank you. 16 years experience in IT. Thank you. Very well experienced. Carl, you're so quick. I'm always amazed at how fast you use it.
Oh, yeah.
USA location. Carl, if I could only go on past you, with all due respect, I know you're at a conference, which I think is cool. You're broadcasting live from the floor.
Trying to.
So maybe that's not you, sir.
I'm on my. No, it is me. I'm just, because I'm on the phone, I don't know how to mute it. Unless you can mute me.
Yeah, no, Cortana mute. Cortana mute. No. That's Q4. We're going to do IoT. Alexa, Q4, IoT. Okay, full-time employee, folks, I'm going to move right along. Primary compensation is salary. You're a W-2 employee with the base of your compensation. And finally, we're getting to the good stuff, folks. We have, look at column K. Carl K. Column J to happen to 3 million partners. And finally, income levels, folks. So we have a double hump here with the income. So we have the lifestyle consultants over in sort of E, F, G, and H, and then we have people. This is what you're paying yourself. It skews towards the low to mid six figures. So column M through O, it skews to the low six figures. And folks, you can do a little bit of research on your own in terms of the compensation you are paid, pay yourself, and what you pay people over at salary.com. And Carl, I just had a conversation with him yesterday. Several people from Introna have gone over to salary.com. So that was very interesting. That was very interesting to learn more about what they do and how they do it. But folks, I'm going to jump back into the presentation, if you don't mind. Finally, and I'll just make mention of this, but you were slightly optimistic about 2016 in terms of economic growth and new opportunity. And that surprised us, Carl, that it was sort of between 0 and 15% positive optimism. That's a shift for a couple of reasons. Good old-fashioned server-side big iron guys and gals tend to be, well, Carl, a little fussy. and so we don't usually see high favorable ratings. This year we did, and I think part of that might be the shift in the crowd.
That's interesting.
Cloud and Azure and some other things. Yeah, I'm going to dig a little deeper into that, some of the individual responses in another way in another day. But that was actually really encouraging from this year's research. Folks, moving right along, we have the community survey that we did recently. Huge response on that one. And here's what you told us. You want, in particular with Office 365 Nation, you want an independent forum for Q&A, so we're working on it. Stand by as we bring that up in the fall with the tour. But Carl, here's where I really want to key in on. When we ask what kind of economic model should we facilitate? So what could SMB Nation be moving forward? Could we be a software distributor? The answer came, a cloud distributor. The answer came back, no, there's a lot of those.
Yeah, not needed, huh?
A little bit crowded. Should we be a mergers and acquisitions firm, do M&A and charge for it? The response was okay, and there's a role for that. But what really surprised us overwhelmingly was people want us to help them get high quality leads. So it's in the analytics area, in the lead gen business, we would call that being an affiliate. We would not be an aggregator. An aggregator is someone that would go buy leads from Hoovers and information please and aggregate them. We're not saying that, but what they are asking is, do we want to become an affiliate and provide them high quality leads? And Carl, this is a topic near and dear to our heart, if you want to comment on that, but it seems to be kind of the number one business issue, man. I need more leads.
Right. Well, the interesting thing is that, what you heard from the other responses was, we don't need a cloud services company because somebody's filling that. We don't need this other stuff. Somebody's filling the mergers and acquisitions. And what they're saying is, hey, nobody is feeding us leads. Nobody is playing that role. And so obviously if there's a gap, it's your opportunity to see what you can do. Now that doesn't make it easy. Just like knowing that information is completely separate from what you do about it.
No, exactly. And here's another Tech Owl reference, folks. So again, introduce yourself to Anurag over at Tech Owl, our research partner. And he's predicting that SMB IT growth will remain flat this year. So here's the translation on that. That's a frustrating number, Carl, because the way we measure GDP, I'll give an example, but if the price of gas goes down, right, which we like, and theoretically that's good.
Right.
If the price of gas goes down, it can actually be measured that we spent less in the economy, right? And you're kind of like, well, wait, but sir, I thought that was good. And to some extent, that's what we're seeing with IT, right? Is that if the customer saves money because of cloud and, cloud up in the data centers and so on, Carl, isn't that a societal benefit? Isn't that good? Isn't that good, right?
Well, it seems good, but unless they're not spending that savings somewhere else.
Well, they're taking vacations to Albuquerque is what they're doing.
well, there is that.
So, folks, I want you to understand what this means, and then it also means that you more than ever need to really sharpen the saw in terms of lead generation. So if you have a mature market, if you have a contracting market, that's when leads become even more important. High quality leads become even more important. And it's for another day in another webinar as to why that is, but that speaks towards some of the survey response. Carl, let's move on. We're almost at midpoint with our time together. We're going to have a Veeam moment in a minute. So, Carl, I'll kind of jump in on this and maybe have you participate in whatever gossip you know to be true in the community. But the earnings have now come out. The mid-year earnings have now come out from the major players. So Amazon was just absolutely off the chart. Microsoft, say what you must, but they know how to run a company, and sometimes it's a little tough. I have some friends that let's just say, Carl, used to work for Microsoft, so they sharpen the saw a little bit out there, but they do know how to run a company. Alphabet surprised to the upside, so that's the
Google.
Google, yeah, love the name. Yeah. And Facebook surprised to the upside. And what that's telling me, for the purposes of this conversation as an analyst, is, look at who's winning, look at who's making the money. The famous saying is, why do you rob banks? Well, that's because that's where the money is.
Exactly.
Losers, I can speak intimately about Tableau. So here's what's interesting. And Carl, we actually have an audience in the mid-size space that can appreciate what Tableau is. Tableau is a data visualization solution. It's not for the faint of heart, and it's not for those with a small pocketbook. But they kind of created the category. I liken them to like a Hayes modem or Polaroid or what have you. They created the category, and the spoils have gone to the victor. But they have now missed 3 quarters in a row on earnings. And it's not that data visualization is not hot. It's two things. One is Tableau is basically a single product company. So they kind of do one thing. And investors get a little bit nervous about one-trick ponies. And guys and gals, I'm sharing this with you because hopefully you're kind of reflecting on your own business model. It's great to be in a niche, but I've heard people in the past say, you really shouldn't spend more than 50% of your time in your niche. You should be, doing other things. So Tableau has some challenges, and then Carl, now they have competition. So that's the other thing. They have competition. Apple had a well-publicized miss. Yahoo, not only did they miss, but Carl, I think we're going to miss them.
Well, they had a long-term missed strategy. there was a time when they could have bought Amazon and they weren't willing to pay the price, which was some ridiculously small number by today's standards. And so, now here it is. They're lucky to exist at all.
Yeah, well, they're certainly going to be. I hope they're happy in their new home over at Verizon. But that'll be a Q4 report. Twitter had a miss again. I equate Twitter to a little bit of a one-trick pony. So let's move on. Who's in? Who's out? So we have the gossip I have. Now, Carl, there's a lot of gossip. If there's anything in this channel, there's gossip. But that's not the kind of gossip I'm here to share.
Oh, okay.
But what's interesting is, folks, you really should follow this guy on LinkedIn, Lance Crosby. So Lance Crosby made a big impact at Rackspace. Or was it Rackspace? It's the one that got acquired by IBM, the hosting company that got acquired by IBM. It was a few years ago, but it all goes back to the Planet. Carl, you may remember the Planet out of
yeah.
And they grew and grew and grew. And SoftLayer. So SoftLayer acquired the Planet. SoftLayer then got acquired by IBM because IBM needed a hosting solution to compete with AWS and Azure and so on. So Lance did well, and then he studied the market. And Carl, about a week ago, it was announced he raised $180 million for a security ISV practice with a little bit of IoT security thrown in and so on. But it's called StackPath. And the reason I share Lance's story is it's the old thing. If you want to be successful, hang out with successful people. So I'd offer kind of get to know what Lance does and says and what he's doing. And boy, that was a huge raise. Carl,
that's why I'm on this call. I'm on this call because I want to hang out with you. So
there you go. Carl, what are you hearing in the? What are you hearing? Any second quarter, mid-year nuggets that have flown by?
I clearly don't have any news that's at that level, but I did just have a chat with somebody with regard to SonicWall. SonicWall was bought by Dell a while back, and now they're being sold by Dell. And there are two major investing companies that are buying the SonicWall line, and one of them is a partial owner of WatchGuard. So I don't think, and I don't want to start any rumors, that there's any remote chance that those companies are getting together, but to have investors who see that both of those companies are worth investing in at the same time suggests that security is really the place to be. Probably the biggest challenge I hear about when I go to conferences is people talking incessantly about ransomware. And I think anything that we can do, along the lines of security is obviously worthwhile. And I think people with money are realizing there's money to be made in investing in that stuff. So that's what little I know.
No, and that would be very attractive to me. Carl, I've done a couple startups and probably have a couple more in me. And I had I had coffee again with one of the early employees of Real Networks, which was Real Player in the music. Boy, talk about a company that created a category,
right,
in terms of streaming music. And he and others are looking at an IoT play, and we're kind of landing on security, right? Because that Alexa, that Echo I have, that's a scary thing. Because if I say the word Alexa, it wakes up, and then I'm kind of thinking, is it listening to me all the time? Is it listening to my phone calls?
Yes. Is it feeding it back to a company that's indexing it? And I can totally see the day, not too far off, where you're going to have a private conversation with your wife about whether or not you need a new tent and what your camping plans are for next weekend or for the next year. And then you go online and Facebook feeds up an ad for tents and summer cottages. I mean, I totally this technology exists. It's just a matter of whether it's being used yet.
No, that's right. That's right. And then, folks, moving along, we always have too much conversation and too little time, Carl. So I'll just kind of speed it up so we get to the good stuff. But layoffs. So, here's the deal. Intel had a big round of layoffs this quarter. Frank Raimondi, my friend and yours, channel chief, over there, he took the early retirement package after many years of service, and he's enjoying life. Life is good. So, layoffs aren't necessarily bad if you get packaged out. Hopefully it's an attractive package. Microsoft announced another, it's the mean season at Microsoft because it's July 1st, the new fiscal year. A small round of layoffs, but what I'm hearing internally, Carl, is they're some of the people are taking pay cuts. So instead of a layoff, if I came to you and I said, Carl, you can lose your job, and you go, no, I don't want to, and then you'd say, okay, then everybody in the department has to take a 5% pay cut. And so I'm hearing some of those conversations. That's in specific business groups. That's not corporate wide. But it's kind of interesting to me because, Carl, what concerns me is we all live to our paycheck, right? So even rich people live to their salary.
Right.
And, so I'm serious, you throw out a 20% pay cut, and it's like, whoa, baby, there goes the boat.
I have to say, so in the state of California, we went through financial crisis for a long, long time. And one of the things that happened was that they gave certain employees, they basically had to take one Friday off every month. And when the money came back, a lot of those people, they didn't want to go back and work all those hours. They kind of liked having that extra day off. And so some of it is also a lifestyle thing, but it does go back to what you were talking about with, does that flatten the economy if the economic growth is gonna go stable or down because people don't have the money to spend?
Yeah,
so,
I didn't even think of it that way.
Do you think this is the final? Do you think this is the final throes of the Microsoft downsizing and right sizing after the Nokia thing?
No. Well, yes, in terms of Nokia, I don't think there's anything left over there. But the reason it's interesting to do the mid-year report is because that's when Microsoft roars, right, with July 1st. And so next year, Carl, I think Microsoft's going to be much smaller. Microsoft's going to be a smaller company moving forward. There's just not as many. You just don't need as many wrench turners in their new business model. So, I think we're going to look back on the day when Microsoft had over 200,000 in headcount, including the VDASH vendors. And just as an aside, Carl, but what was interesting is Amazon released their employment numbers with their earnings. They are up to 283,000 employees. I mean,
wow.
Seriously? When you're hot, you're hot. Mergers and acquisitions. So Oracle and NetSuite is interesting. It's the upper M part of the market. Stay tuned for that. That doesn't surprise me because Oracle was already a pretty big investor in NetSuite and ERP system. But what that's going to do, Carl, is create opportunity for other CRM providers. I'll shout out to, Grace over at idea2.com, a friend of ours in the community. She could benefit from some of the upheaval, Nassim or Samsov over at Results, be a beneficiary of this. So you're going to see some upheaval. The Microsoft LinkedIn acquisition, if we have learning partners on, I've been having conversations with learning partners over the past couple months, and then that conversation really kind of took a left turn when Microsoft acquired LinkedIn because there's a concern that Microsoft is competing against its learning partners, potentially with lynda.com, which was acquired by LinkedIn. And Microsoft also kind of controls the keys to the kingdom with LinkedIn, right? They can definitely do better analytics than you or I can. So some concerns from learning partners about that acquisition. And then, Carl, I think you're qualified to talk about SolarWinds. I kind of know it from a high level. SolarWinds acquired GFI, which is now Logic Now. Do you have any comments on that? I think you're a little closer to that conversation.
Well, I'm maybe just a little closer, but I can tell you I work fairly close with folks at Logic Now, and the main thing that I've seen so far is just kind of everything is slowed down while they do some rebranding. You know, there's as funny as it sounds, you spend millions and millions of dollars and then you put everything on hold while you change the logo on all of the handouts and the PDFs and the signage, you know.
Signage companies love bank mergers, always have.
Yeah, but you know, part of what they've done is that SolarWinds has got remote monitoring and management tools at a very high level, and Logic Now has got it for, you know, they've kind of nailed it in the small and medium space. And so the big question is, since one is completely on-site and one is completely hosted, can they merge them? Will they eventually merge them? So all that is under discussion at this point, or whether they will have, you know, two platforms and just kind of gradually make them look more alike. I'll tell you what I think, this is just my speculation, but what I think the SolarWinds really acquired with Logic Now is the analytics. You know, their Logic cards and their ability to, you know, they have figured out how to look at all of the data on all of the machines at all of their RMM agents and resellers, and it's gargantuan, right? To be able to say, here's the average failure rate of a 6-year-old hard drive from, you know, Western Digital in this, you know, series, and then do predictive analytics about, okay, here's literally, you can tell your clients, here's the probability that these 3 hard drives are going to fail. That's gargantuan, right? And that's the tip of the iceberg of what they can do.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that takes us back to our first point on big data and analytics. You know, it's a paradigm shift, an overused, what was that, a 80s word, 90s word?
But it really is going to make all the RMM vendors, which have become kind of a commodity, now they have to, you know, figure out how to provide analytics at some useful level, you know, because it's really quite amazing to look at what percentage of your people have this and that and the other thing. And I get reports on a geographic basis of which viruses are prevalent within 20, 30, 80 miles of my location. And that's kind of cool, right? So assuming they do business with people who are near them, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well here, folks, as usual, we have too much going on, but let's have a Veeam moment. So I want to give you the context, and I want to share a little information with you about Veeam. So Veeam graciously has underwritten today's program, and enthusiastically so, Carl, at SMB Nation, we're shifting our webinar model to have bona fide content. And Veeam agreed to that let's have content that is impactful and contemporary and so on. And you know, today it's business speak. Other weeks it can certainly be geek speak. And then we'll underwrite that, and we support that. So we appreciate that. So the Veeam moment, as you can see on the screen, this webinar is co-sponsored by Veeam Software. Veeam builds right-sized solutions for small to medium-sized businesses that helps them leverage their existing investments in the modern data center, including virtualization, storage, and cloud technologies. Veeam understands the unique pains these businesses are facing, including ensuring the availability of data and applications, basically 5 nines or 24/7 by 365 per year. And then, Carl, one other shout out is that Veeam has pioneered a new market for availability with the always-on enterprise, and it helps companies solve the challenges of keeping their businesses up and running at all times. At all times, Veeam enables the always-on business with solutions that provide recovery time and point objectives of less than 15 minutes for virtualized applications and data. Folks, please visit veeam.com. And in my handwritten thank you note that you'll receive tomorrow for attending, I'll have some additional links and more information about Veeam. But if you could support those who support us, totally appreciate it. We're all on the same team. Carl, let's move forward. We have about 15 minutes left, so some second half trends. I'll kind of jump on this because I know there's some slides coming up that are more Carl speak. So some second half trends that I think you just want to have on your radar screen is the impact or the non-impact of the election on spending. So years ago, there was a belief that, oh my goodness, the U.S. economy shuts down in the fall of a presidential election year. You know, people are busy being precinct chairman and this and that and the other, and the electoral college and voting and campaigning. I disagree with that, Carl. I think, I don't know if it's, you know, vote by mail or whatever. I think voting's changed. And I think we still get up in the morning and do it all over again, our job and our work. So now where it can have an impact is the uncertainty. And this is an uncertain year on the electoral front. And it can also have an impact with sort of the world affairs before and after election. Best example there, Carl, is the Brexit vote over in Europe. In fact, I think you stay in better touch with Richard Tubb over there, popular blogger. I have not checked in with him. I need to check in and see, is it frozen the economy, you know, attitudinally or not? So I'll Alexa, have me call Richard Tubb. There we go.
Yeah, I mean, and part of it is just the volatility of the stock prices going up and down because people are uncertain. And as soon as you have a decision, you know, stay in, get out of the EU, or, you know, as soon as you have a president, there's a little less volatility because you have a little more certainty, right? So that's at least the theory, is that we're going to see a lot of uncertainty, you know, as people take it more and more seriously the closer it gets. Luckily, it's a short season, you know. So.
Yeah, well, 98 days, I think, today.
Almost over. Strangest election in my lifetime.
Yeah, it is. We're looking at Goldilocks growth, so it's not too hot, not too cold. That, quite frankly, that can be frustrating, but it beats the alternatives. So Goldilocks growth in the second half of the year. Products roadmaps very quickly. So we have the Windows 10 anniversary just passed us. Azure is becoming a strong conversation. Storage is so strong, Carl, which is great why Veeam is supporting us. Because it's just the big data. I mean, we're just multiplying data. You know, what was that famous line out of My Big Fat Greek Wedding of, you know, having babies who eat and then have babies who eat and then have babies.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of truth to that. And then Veeam, you'll hear more from Veeam, by the way, because Veeam is having a big product announcement. We're not allowed to share that with you, but stay tuned. On August 23rd, the biggest announcement in their history. And then it goes without saying, cloud computing is, I think our earnings report showed the strength of cloud. Vendor partner relationships maturing. So, Carl, I'll go first, sir, then you can contribute. But I've had a lot of conversations the past few months with partners. You know, I try to speak to several partners a week. And boy, howdy, has relationship in many cases changed between the vendor and the partner. And I'll give you an example. A mid-sized MSP in Denver who has a thriving Autodesk practice, so a technology consultant for Autodesk, the CAD/CAM package, is also an MSP. And he went to quite frankly, a Microsoft event, S&B Live, and it's now a 2-day format. And he was very open. I won't say his name, but he was open in sharing that he was frustrated in that he kind of felt that they were trying to make him a merchant or a licensed reseller over the course of 2 days, which is not why he got into this industry, right? He likes, quite frankly, he likes more of, like, I'm going to say, the chops or horsepower that the Beam solution has, right? There's some there with Beam.
There you go.
And he can get his bit fixed. So we're seeing a natural tension continue between partners and vendors. Carl, do you have? We're a little tight on time. Do you have an example, that you're picking up on with some of the dynamic tension?
Well, I do think it's, the two examples you mentioned, Microsoft and Veeam, are really clear. I mean, Microsoft has changed their business model, and it's not personal, and it's not they're not here to irritate me or anybody on the call. They just are selling things differently than they used to, and the role that they want me to play is completely different, and that's their choice. On the other hand, Veeam isn't here because they said, hey, let's go support Tech Junction. They're here to support a local partner who brought them in to be a featured speaker. And, so they're helping their partner here, and to be honest, I don't know which partner it is, but because I'm on this call instead of in their presentation. But, they've decided that they need to help partners and educate end users. So, there's always going to be people selling with different models, and we just have to figure out which ones can we use to make money for us. Because if Microsoft can look after their own stuff, I certainly should be able to look after mine and determine what's best for me.
There you go. So, Carl, this is your point. You've invented a time machine. Great. I want to be younger. Talk to me.
I just want to harken back to the slide where the 40s and above and the 50s and above constitute 70% of the folks on the poll. There's no shortage of young people in this business. They're just doing it differently, and they're going to completely have a different way of looking at everything in technology. And the reason I say that, the aging has to end, on one hand, people are getting old, and that there is an end point to that. On the other hand, this industry has to become younger. More people have to get into it, and those lower ages, those bars have to grow. There's absolutely no other alternative. The industry will exist. People will be serving clients. They will be selling services, right? And what they sell is going to be different. But we have to figure out how to get to people who think that they are computer consultants and train them how to be value-added resellers and managed service providers and cloud service providers, because they don't know that those terms exist, so they have no way to search on them, right? So they literally think that they're computer guys. Well, they're not computer guys, and if they try to be computer guys, they're going to fail. That's not where this industry is. They're cloud guys. They're reseller guys. They are the people. There's always going to be a need for people to provide service in that last mile, at the client's office. There's always going to be printers, and there's always going to be desktops, and somebody has to put it all together. And and it's not going to be the people who have been doing it for the last 30 years.
No. Hey, Carl, I want to fortify your comment on late yesterday. Jay McBain, who's a prominent analyst and participant in the community himself, he's the CEO of Channelize, and he posted up on LinkedIn late yesterday. Oh boy, Carl, it's probably 1,500 words. It's quite good, and it's called an open letter to CompTIA, and he talks about attracting millennials and others into the fold, and more, that's over 1,500 words, which we don't have time to go into, but I got a little chippy, and I commented that, not only, sir, are you handsome, but you're also smart. And but I really enjoyed this piece. So folks, look up Jay McBain up on LinkedIn and look at his post up. moving on, Carl, this is kind of your slide, sir. I'm going to hand you the talking stick for a few minutes. Talk to us about best practices for the second half of the year that, quite frankly, never go out of style.
Exactly. Well, part of it also, just, over at Small Biz Thoughts, I have a blog where you can find Harry's blog and Jay's blog. So I link to them in the blog roll on the right. So anyway, I think in terms of, how do you get the most out of the last part of the year, some of it is, like you say, the same old story, right? That standard operating procedures, staying up on what's new, getting some education, those are always the best ways to get ahead. And then choosing the right tools and techniques. I mean, holy smokes, so many people in this industry have not invested in the appropriate tools, and that's the way that you're going to stay ahead is, right, you have to have the right partners, the right solutions, and the right tools in order to get you ahead. So I no longer have my slide in front of me, just so you know. Moved out in the hallway.
Okay.
So.
Well, yeah, no problem, Carl. So it was some considerations that you had about, quite frankly, folks, jump over to Carl's site because you're Oracle of Knowledge. Carl, working in real time, financial processes, and core SOPs.
Right. So, and that's what I try to educate folks on is that you have to have the processes. They don't have to be my processes. I'm in no way telling people you got to run your business the same way I run mine, but you do have to standardize. There's just no point in not standardizing. And probably the best book I've ever read that did anything for my business was The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. And I was lucky enough to read that the first year I was in business. So, and it's all about you have to document your processes. Otherwise, you can't hire people. You can't pass on your stuff. You're not going to have a business worth buying or selling if you don't have standardized processes. The MSPs that are getting money for their businesses are the ones that have really standardized it, so somebody else can come in and the owner can literally go away, right? So
yeah,
if you don't put that in place, it's not going to happen by itself.
Carl, that's absolutely right. I'll add to that. So being an entrepreneur with ADHD, and Carl, that's a fact. I was that disruptive kid in grade school who got sent to the office. True that. But I'm not that person to make the processes and procedures. I'm the person, hopefully, to know that I need that person.
Right. And you can outsource that.
Yeah. Well, I don't think Jennifer Hallmark wouldn't want to be referred to as outsourcing, but you know what I'm getting at is that Jennifer Hallmark with SMB Nation has been with us 10 years. She's over in the radio control room, but she is that person who brings that detail and that focus. So I have a question. Erica is asking, is this being recorded? And the answer is yes, it's being recorded, and folks are going to get a playback link tomorrow when I send a handwritten thank you note. You'll get a reminder of Veeam's generous sponsorship of the webinar. And Carl, we are like a minute out. I'm going to give you the final word, sir, if you have any free-form thoughts about mid-year and the second half of the year before we reconvene in Q4.
Well, I just encourage people to have the attitude that we really do have a blue ocean, right? I mean, I personally think there's never been a better time to be in technology. There's so many cool things happening, and they're happening so fast. It's always been the case in technology that you can educate yourself that something was invented during this phone call that will dominate the world in 5 years, and you can learn it, and you can master it, and you can be there when people turn to it and say, oh, here's this new thing. You can be the master of it, and that literally is happening every day, and it's just nothing but opportunity as far as I'm concerned. But you have to be out there looking for it and be willing to educate yourself and take on new things.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Carl. We're going to make that the final word. Thank you, Veeam. Thank you, people. It's now 1 p.m. on the West Coast, 4 p.m. on the East Coast, early evening. We always have some people from Dublin on, so it's early evening. Thank you, gentlemen, again. And Carl, it's 6 a.m. in Sydney, Australia. So good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Tomorrow.
And folks, totally appreciate you participating. Have a great day. Jenny, thanks for your help.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me.